Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Once again, I am Matthew with Watty's channel. Today, we are finally diving in to the review of the 1990 WWF Hasbro action figures. So this line did cover 11 series spanning from 1990 to 1994. So it wasn't really until 93, 94 when you started seeing massive amount of series in each year. So like Series 1 came out in 1990, Series 2, 91, and then once you got to 92, you started having, multiple series released that year. So the Hasbro action figures are probably the most coveted action figures in history. Regardless of what cartoon you watched, what movie, it doesn't matter what the genre is. This particular toy line is probably the cream of the crop when it comes to action figures, and it's such a beloved commodity that so many people nowadays emulate to the best of their ability these action figures. So just kind of look at the different companies out there manipulating their action figures to kind of look like the Hasbros. You've got grapplers and gimmicks. You've got the zombie sailor heels and faces. You've got the Mattel retros that obviously when Mattel came out with these figures, I think it was like 2016, that was the whole purpose. Retro, meaning essentially old. It's going to sound a lot better than Mattel vintage. So who else was there? I know there's more than just zombie sailor. So Zombie Sailor had theirs, grapplers and gimmicks, Mattel retros, even Ringside Collectibles came out with their own version of this style of action figure. And there's one other commodity I'm not thinking of right now. Oh, Cella Toys is a huge one. And I'm actually looking forward to doing those Cella Toy reviews as well, because you might be interested or surprised by what I got to say in regards to those figures. So I'm not going to talk too long. I'm going to dive right in to the action figures. And we're going to start off with carded figures first. Look at the loose figures, some other actions that are unique to the particular line. And the first figure, of course, who other than the great Hulk Hogan. So, because the era of the Hasbros is what I grew up watching, and the era of the Hasbros of the action figures I had as a kid. The good thing about this series of action figures, or this line of action figures, at least I know every single wrestler that they released. So that right there is fantastic. Obviously, going back and doing the Galoob reviews and the Rumco reviews, I was very unfamiliar with the majority of those characters. Once you get to Hasbro, again, it's the era that I really started watching wrestling, really getting into it. And so I may not have a lot of backstories or anything like that with certain wrestlers, but I still know of them, and that right there is fun for me. So Hasbro was unique in this line. To my knowledge, I don't know of any other action figures. I'm not saying that there wasn't. To me, at least as far as wrestling figures are concerned, they didn't really have this particular action function with each action figure. So with each figures, they do have their own unique style of action. What was bad about Hasbro is they basically recycled a ton of bodies. So you're going to see Hulk Hogan in Series 1. You're going to see Ultimate Warrior in Series 2, the British Bulldog in Series 4, Ludwig Borga in Series 11, etc. Those are just some of the big ones I remember that have this, slamming feature. Over time with play, these features do become loose and actually stop working. Which, if you're a collector, obviously you want the most mint figure, and mint doesn't always mean lack of paint loss or discoloration or anything like that. With these particular figures, mint also includes that action. So this is a Hulk Hogan figure I did have as a kid. A lot of Series 1 and Series 2 figures I had as a kid, so obviously for nostalgia reasons, those figures in particular are really going to speak to me. And I didn't have them all, of course, but the ones that we did have, I'll mention them. And this was definitely one of my all-time favorite figures. Hulk Hogan, generally, it was a was a puncher, so having this open hand feature, I know a lot of people dislike that. With the open hands, but these particular characters, you know, I'm on the edge. I mean, I really don't care to an extent. Would it be better with closed fists? Of course, but he always used to do this little rake across the back and everything. So you know that kind of works. Hulk Hogan is the first action figure from Hasbro from Series 1, 1990 release. Then the line stays strong with another Mega Superstar. And this was a character who, when fans were starting to get over Hulk Hogan, I mean, the man had, what was it, from the course of 1984 to 1990, 91, when did, trying to think, WrestleMania 6 maybe, when Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior did battle. I might have the years wrong. That's okay. Anyone that watched wrestling during that time period, they know what I'm talking about. So Ultimate Warrior did actually defeat Hulk Hogan clean in that matchup, and as a kid, one of the greatest matches I had ever seen. Of course, as a kid, I always said that Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant was also on par with one of the greatest matches. And then I watched it years later. I think sometime last year, I watched that for the first time since childhood. And I felt like that match was so completely boring. And it hurts me to say that because, I mean, I love Andre and Hogan, right? So, but that match between Warrior and Hogan, even today as an adult, by today's standards, I still think that was a fantastic match. Two absolute icons. Probably two of the best-selling merchandise come from Hogan and Warrior. The Ultimate Warrior figure in itself, aesthetically overall, and as a playable figure, is actually a really solid figure. Don't get it wrong, this is a serviceable action figure. The issue that you run into this particular action figure, you know, this little head bop thing that they do, little head raise. The whole premise is you're supposed to lower them, and they're supposed to jump up and kind of, you know, tackle the opponent and whatnot. But I'm pretty sure 99.9% of actual fans or kids who played with these figures, or adults who play with them, you know, why not, didn't actually use the action features. To me, it was nice to have, but it wasn't exactly imperative, you know, for play. Another negative that I despise about a lot of these type of figures, Mattel Retros are doing the same thing, and Ringside Collectibles, they came out with their figures, but they were still Mattel made, so. But with the fused legs, certain figures I can understand. For the longest time, I tried to picture Kamala with something other than fused legs. I really couldn't come up with a good design, so I felt like Kamala was okay, even though that man was never jumping off the top rope. So it's a good looking figure overall, very playable. I had this figure as a kid. It was highly used. Again, Ultimate Warrior. How can you have a bad Ultimate Warrior figure, essentially? But absolute beauty overall. Is he my favorite? Of course not. Next up, we're going to feature Macho Man Randy Savage. The great thing about this is you have Hogan, Warrior, Macho Man, my top 3 all-time favorite wrestlers, all going back to back to back. And not only do you have pretty decent card backings, you got these little notes right here in the corner, which is always awesome. Kind of tells you what their particular action features, like Gorilla Press Slam for Hulk Hogan. For the Ultimate Warrior, it's the Ultimate Smash. And for Randy Savage, we have Elbow Smash. Now, what constitutes an elbow smash. This right here is probably one of my all-time favorite features. It's so simple, and it just makes the figure work really well. And not a figure on my top 10 list of all-time favorites, but there is absolutely no doubt the Series 1 Macho Man is one of the most elite action figures of the line. So, Macho Man. You know, it's kind of crazy seeing him and the Ultimate Warrior. One of my oldest memories of Macho Man features him jumping to the top rope, dropping like 5 elbows on the Ultimate Warrior, and then the Warrior still kicks out. And I think Macho Man is really the guy that perfected the elbow drop. Going to the top, dropping the elbow. It never looks like he actually hurt anybody, but when you actually physically watch it, it looks like he's absolutely brutalizing the opponent. So, just a solid worker, just knowing his limits and knowing how to perfect his craft. Definitely, Macho Man will always be in my heart among my all-time favorite characters. Beautiful figure, fantastic fighting pose. You know, a perfect figure overall. As far as fighting poses, I kind of gravitate towards like guys like Honky Tonk Man. You know, with the arms straight out, you know, legs kind of flat, straight out. And when we get to Series 2, we'll take a look at that figure and you'll see why I really appreciate that. But some of the best action figures have come based on the Series 1 Macho Man pose. We're looking at White Pants Shawn Michaels out of Series 7, Black Pants Series 10 Shawn Michaels, Rick Martel out of Series 5, etc. So a number of figures do come like this, and it's a good looking one. So Macho Man Randy Savage is number 3 on this list. Next one up, very well possibly my all-time favorite bad guy. So Ted DiBiase, I think at one point, I want to say the 1990 Royal Rumble, was in the matchup for 50 minutes, 51 minutes, 52, something like that. And at that time, he actually had the longest tenured in-ring as far as appearance and whatnot. I think the next year, Rick Martel topped it by like 7 minutes or something. I think he came in for like 59 minutes or whatnot. I don't know if anyone actually has surpassed an hour, but I would think so. Guys like Ric Flair, Rey Mysterio, Shawn Michaels, you know, British Bulldog, you know, guys that came in at number 1 or number 2 and basically were there at the end, either as winners or, you know, runner-up. $1 Million Man, the great thing about this particular figure, it gives you your first figure with an accessory, and the $1 Million belt is easily one of the single greatest accessories in this line. Last year when I did my favorite accessories, I don't know where I put it, I think probably number 8 or something, which is crazy because, again, I love the $1 Million belt. To me, it's the best, or at least one of the, you know, obviously it's got to be one of the best. People always talk about that WWF Hasbro's only produced one championship belt, and that's that black belt that comes with the original wrestling ring. But it doesn't seem like anybody ever talks about the Series 1 or 2, you know, $1 Million Man belts. You know, if you have those figures and you're looking for a belt and you don't have one, you know, you could pretend to use the $1 Million belt as your heavyweight championship belt. Why not? And just an absolutely good-looking figure. The only downside of this $1 Million Man figure in comparison to the later series, the figure is just a lot smaller. So this guy does have the $1 Million punch. Now, I don't think all of my loose figures have working action, so hopefully this one does. No, he doesn't. Well, he does a little bit, but it's kind of weak, though. You know, this thing's really supposed to, like, really rocket forward. One of the things that kind of bothered me as a kid, especially with figures like, you know, Hogan and, you know, British Bulldog, guys that had the gorilla press, sometimes you have arms like this, and so you have to kind of like, you know, spring load it to get the arms situated the same way, so that when you do the press, you know, lift it up, they pop back down. You don't have one arm down here, another arm up here. So definitely one of the more tinier figures of the Hasbro line. I did not have this one, so kind of looking back, I had Hogan, I had Warrior. I did not have the Macho Man as a kid, and I did not have this version of $1 Million Man as a kid either. And I think that's why I kind of appreciate the green suited $1 Million Man more than the other two figures in this line. Another great thing about these four figures, these first four that we've looked at, there's about, I want to say 92 action figures in the Hasbro line. Probably 70 or so, estimating, are different wrestlers. You've got a lot of characters that came out with 2 different action figures, 3 different action figures, 4 different action figures. $1 Million Man is just one of a handful that actually had 3 or more action figures. So, a very beloved character. Later on, I don't know if it was back surgery or whatnot, but he was no longer capable of wrestling. So he did become a manager and actually formed the $1 Million Corporation, which to me was one of probably, if not the greatest faction of all time. You know, you could talk about your WCW 4 Horsemen. Decent, you know, depending on all the different characters you had members of that faction, but there were still like 4 at a time. You had $1 Million Man. You had Kama, which is a character I remember. Oddly enough, I never realized that Kama, Goodfather, Godfather, Papa Shango were all the same person. I didn't learn that until adulthood. You know, I didn't even realize Kama, you know, who I remember watching as a kid, and Papa Shango were one and the same. So that's kind of, you know, good that I kind of picked that up and, you know, learned that over the years. Who else was part of Bam Bam Bigelow? Just prior to his feud with Lawrence Taylor and him going face and everything, was another big pickup. Tatanka. I'm going to talk about all these characters again when I actually talk about those series reviews. Tatanka turning on Lex Luger and, you know, accepting the $1 Million Man's bribe. Who was it? Not Precious. Dang, what was her name? The manager for Dusty Rhodes. I know it's like a Sapphire. That was her name. I know it was like a Precious Stone. I just couldn't remember which one. But he always had a way of kind of like buying out people and everything. And I think this was a great way for the WWF to kind of, you know, cut ties with certain characters, certain performers, wrestlers, managers, etc. And, you know, just kind of use him as, you know, he bought them off. Bam, they're gone. A great way to write them out of the storyline, write them out of the business. So, $1 Million Man. I really want to stay down here and make just like a video for every series because, like I said, I'm just so excited about a lot of these different characters and stories that I do remember. And now you got to imagine, I was like 12 or 13 years old when I stopped watching wrestling, so you're talking 97, 98. And even then, I don't even have the best memory. So as far as trying to remember everything that happened from childhood, I just don't have those type of recollections, unfortunately. Here is a good, but maybe not a great figure, and it is Jake Roberts. Another figure I had as a kid. Another figure that comes with one of the greatest accessories in the entire line. So this guy has the Python Punch. Again, so many of these action figures in Hasbro, what Hasbro simply did is they recycled the bodies, cut off the head, put a new head on, bam, you got a brand new character. So, even though I had Jake Roberts as a kid, and here's the funny thing, with a lot of these accessories, all of our wrestling figures were kind of like stationary in one single spot. When we moved out of our apartments, moved into our house, which is basically the house I spent most of my life in until I graduated high school. We had all our wrestling figures in this little cabinet drawer and everything, and that's what we wrestled on, that little table or desk, whatever you want to call it. So it's like, whatever happened to the accessories? And I know I'm not alone. I know pretty much any kid out there always lost these things, and it sucks because a lot of these things would have made a really great storylines in our federation as from childhood. So, a couple things I really love about the Jake Roberts figure. First and foremost, his open legs. I always feel like he has the best kicking and drop kick and everything, so fantastic. I've always said that I thought he had, if not the number one, then definitely somewhere near the top of the best boots of the Hasbros. And I've always given these figures a hard time because I was never a big fan of the whole punching motion. You know, for starters, you kind of got like this little spring that you can see in the arm, which kills the figure. You know, you kind of got to like do this little shoulder dislocation. So, is it the worst action of the line? No. I really enjoy these figures, even the arm punching ones. So, I'm not going to hate on it as much as I had been in the years prior. Is it my favorite motion action for the figures? No. Depending on the different actions, I don't know how many different actions there are, 5, 6, whatever. It'll probably be like somewhere in the bottom 2, bottom 3, somewhere in that line. So, but again, overall quality figure, probably the number 3 greatest accessory, number 4 somewhere up there. And if it wasn't for some of the cloaks that the wrestlers had, I think that this would be like a number 1 accessory. And no, I had Honky Tonk Man at number 1 as far as accessory goes. But a beautiful overall figure for Jake Roberts. Memories of Jake Roberts. As one of my favorite villains. He was sometimes good guy, sometimes bad guy. You know, he was like right there with like Macho Man. They always seemed to like kind of go back and forth. So I remember a matchup that he was kind of doing as like a blindfolded match with Rick Martel. I guess on a previous show, Rick Martel had used his arrogant spray bottle on him, blinded him. So they had this little mask draped over their head, and eventually, yeah, they're just, you know, feeling around the entire time. And, you know, for a 20-minute match or however long it was, boring overall. But once Jake Roberts gets you in his clutches and puts that DDT on you, it's lights out. One of my favorite finishers, and it's a very simple finisher to boot. So, Jake Roberts. I had this one as a kid, and definitely got a lot of play. Another one that I had as a kid, the Big Boss Man. And, you know, you got to give Hasbro credit. They were trying to keep the Boss Man as close to, you know, how he was portrayed in like late 80s when he first came in. I mean, you remember when he first got into WWF, you know, he was this huge guy. Not like, I don't know, King Kong Bundy huge, but the man had a bit of a gut on him. The figure does come with the Hard Time Slam, which is just another, you know, gorilla press type of deal. My problem with this figure from childhood is the same problem that every person in childhood had, what we all have nowadays as well. Overall, good looking figure, but he's very disproportionate. Very tiny head and a robust stomach. But if you kind of balance this out and you see how nice the Series 3, why the Series 3 Big Boss Man is on my top 10 list of most perfect or all-time favorite Hasbro figures. They gave him a, you know, even though I'm not a fan of the arm, extended arm, beautiful pose that works for what he was famous for doing. You know, kind of getting guys in those little kind of like slams, one-arm slam type of deal. So, for that particular figure, it works a whole lot better than what you get out of this one. And yet another figure that comes with an accessory, with the nightclub nightstick. I had this as a kid, as I said. I played it. It got a lot of play. Big Boss Man, again, at a time when he first came in, he teamed up with Akeem. You know, Twin Towers, you feuded with Hulk Hogan. Watching Akeem and One Man Gang, Akeem and Big Boss Man, I think it was the '89 Royal Rumble. kind of tag up on Hulk Hogan and like basically throw him out with ease. It was like crazy because you think Hulk Hogan is always gonna be one of those guys who's gonna be in there towards the end, and kind of like watching Hogan, clothesline Warlord over the ropes a year or two later. I think it was the 1990 Rumble. You don't think of a guy of his stature going out that easily, but I mean, between the Twin Towers, you've got 800 pounds or close to it working against you. So, Big Boss Man overall, a very solid figure. Much better in Series 3, of course, but, it's a must-have. Now, one of the worst figures, I don't remember where I had him, but Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Possibly number 6 or 7. I actually did a review of, my top 10 favorite, top 10 least favorite Hasbros. Of course, this figure is going to be on the top 10 least favorite. He does have that sleeper hold. So, essentially, the whole gimmick is you would just take a wrestler, and the way that you would kind of put the finisher on, you just, put the little sleeper hold on him. Another figure with a fantastic accessory. And what are we back to? We're back to the stupid fused legs. And with the way the whole head pops up. I could be wrong, but I don't think any of the Mattel Retros that have the fused legs actually have the feature where A, the head rises up, and B, you've got this hideous... I don't know what this is all about. This is just garbage. At least Mattel Retros and these other lines that make these features, at least they don't destroy the figure by adding this unnecessary addition to the body. Yeah, I had this figure as a kid. Did it get played with? Of course. Not a bad looking figure at all overall. And here's the thing. I might complain about a lot of Hasbro figures, but to be honest, because I grew up with this line, I love this line so much, even the worst figure in the line, I'm still going to enjoy. So, don't be confused and be like, hey, he thinks this is a bad figure, because I really don't. I really love all of the Hasbros. Same thing with the LJNs. I really love all the LJN figures, regardless of how much I might despise a certain character, or not the character, but the figure, like Jimmy Snuka LJN, which is horrible. This is another one. I think this is one of the worst from the line, but I really do love all these figures, and the fingers, man. I don't know what this was all about. Like, I always kind of have the guys where the fingers are right beneath the throw and just throw them a punch or something, like knockout punch. I mean, I really don't know what else you can really do with this. But Brutus the Barber Beefcake. My biggest memory of this character, and had nothing to do with his in-ring competition, and it really wasn't pertaining to him. It was about the Rockers. We all know, once I talk about Brutus Beefcake and the Rockers, we all know the incident. So during one of the barbershop scenes that saw the Rockers participate, they kind of hug it out and everything, kind of make up, and then Shawn Michaels, drops his leg, or does his little leg kick thing that he does, and threw him through the glass window. As a kid watching that, I don't know how old I was, 5 years old or something, 6, I don't remember. That could have been, it could have been like 92, 93, but I think it was like 90, 91 when that happened. And just watching that, it had to be later than 92. I think 92 was about right, because 91 was when Series 2 came out and the Rockers were still together, so. Even today's date, you can kind of reflect on that. It looks so real. It's like, man, I loved the Rockers as a kid, so seeing that and just realizing that these guys weren't going to be teammates anymore, that was a really hard sell for me. We've got Brutus the Barber Beefcake. So we are currently at almost 30 minutes. I've got 5 more figures to look at. I didn't realize that this was going to take as long as it has. I'm trying to think if I want to break this up into 2 videos or do it in one video, because this is probably going to be like a 50-minute video if I don't. Gotta think quick. Let's see. 1, 2. So I did 4. You know what? I did 7 here. I got 5 figures left to complete Series 1. So I will end the video here, and I'm going to post these videos on back-to-back days, so you're not having to wait like 2-3 days to get the next course or next set of figures. So at 31 minutes, I'm going to end. Say thank you for watching, guys, as per usual. Be on the lookout for the very next day, because I'm going to post videos on back-to-back days. Alright, that's all. Thanks, everybody.